Hi, my name's Niki. I'm the Obsessive Bookseller, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be sharing my top 10 favorite audiobook series. 6 or 7 years ago, I suffered a really severe eye strain injury. I went from on my feet, sorting books all day, to sitting in front of a blurry screen with a lot of bright lights around me for 8 hours a day. And my eyes just gave up. They're like, we're done. Thank goodness for audiobooks, or else my favorite form of entertainment would have been completely stripped from me. And I am only just now, over the last year or so, able to get back to reading a book physically every night and actually be able to spend more than 2 or 3 minutes on it at a time. It has been awesome. But even if I can get back to full reading capacity with my own eyes, I think I would still include audiobooks as an integral part of my reading experience. I love them so much. I have a hard time sitting still and feeling inefficient. So when I'm doing one thing, I always feel like I want to also be doing another thing, and audiobooks are perfect for that type of mindset. I love that if I have to clean for a couple of hours, it doesn't feel like such an ordeal because it's the perfect opportunity to listen to books. I don't get stressed out when I'm stuck in traffic. I'm like, just more time to make it further in my book. So I love that they allow me to experience stories while doing other things. I've tried cooking while holding a book in my hand, and it did not go very well. And in that time frame, I have listened to a lot of audio series and found some really good ones. I even wrote audio production quality reviews for Audiophile magazine for 2 years, so I have been training my critical eye on what makes an audiobook good. Now granted, all of it is subjective, and who I love may not work for your ears. There are a few times where I've seen people like, oh, I like that series, but I can't stand the narrator. And I'm like, that's one of my favorite narrators. What are you talking about? So, with a grain of salt, these are my favorites. And you can't have an audiobook list without talking about James Marsters in the Dresden Files. This man is so good at telling Harry's story that, in my mind, he is Harry Dresden. Like, there isn't a person named James Marsters just walking around the earth. No, this is actually like Harry coming through the story portal and talking to us directly. He is that good. And I think he's really brilliant at setting an awesome pacing for the story and indicating some scenes of emotional struggle without going overboard. And my favorite thing about him is the delivery of the dry humor. So good. So if you are thinking of picking up the Dresden Files, audiobook is the way to go 100%. By the way, these are in no particular order. Anything narrated within the last 10 or 15 years by Michael Cramer and Kate Redding. You know them mostly from Brandon Sanderson's work, and I love them for the Stormlight Archive. They are a perfect balance. Every once in a while they'll pronounce names differently than the other person, but that's okay. That's just, whatever. And actually, Michael Cramer, I first listened to in the Mistborn series, and I found his voice so piercing that I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to make it through the book. Like, it was so unlike anything I'd heard before, but he grew on me. And each progressive book, I ended up looking forward to the sound of his narration. And then I am pretty sure he also did The Eye of the World, but way back in the day before he had developed so many different variations to his voice. So he's decent there, but he's even better now. And Kate Redding is a class act when it comes to narration. She is so good, so immersive, so completely appropriate to the story that she's telling. I love how she fluctuates her voice based on the age range of the characters she's talking about. My favorite solo project she's done is The Memoirs of Lady Trent by Marie Brennan. Completely appropriate, slightly highbrow delivery of the text. And she has a way of making everything just that much more fun. Anything by them is golden. And as it happens, they are a married couple, but that's as far as I want to know about them, because if I know too much about the narrators themselves, then it pulls me out of the stories while I'm listening to them. But I thought that was a cool nugget. The Gentleman Bastard series by Scott Lynch, narrated by Michael Page, and I definitely thought he enhanced the story here. There are a couple of the dry humor bits that just really popped and stuck in my brain because I think he is so freaking funny. The story is slightly cheeky, and so it calls for a narrator who is also slightly cheeky. And he has a pretty good range of emotion for each thing that he's delivering, like very impassioned delivery, which serves incredibly well, especially in the second book when the author kind of like rips your soul out. I love that book so much. And I do believe that the whole thing was enhanced by Page's really good delivery. Possibly my favorite on the list, Stephen Pacey and all things Joe Abercrombie. If you do the audiobook for the short story compilation Sharp Ends, at the end they have an interview between Stephen Pacey and Joe Abercrombie, and it is one of the most funny, like delightful things I have ever listened to and experienced. I loved it so much. Can we talk for a minute about how well Stephen Pacey conveys Glokta? Glokta is the best character in the series as far as I'm concerned. I love them all. I love all of them. But he is the best one, and I think Pacey's narration brilliance is one of the reasons why I love him so much and why he was so memorable for the series. But then this is also a perfect marriage between a dry humor writing style and a narrator who can really deliver on that and land all the punchlines perfectly timed. This is a match made in heaven, and one of the few series I would say don't even bother reading the physical copies. Like, the audiobooks are that good. And speaking of, the only other audio narrator who I can say that about is... I just forgot his name. Jim Dale from the Harry Potter series. Like, Harry Potter's good in any format, but Jim Dale has so many character variations that you really feel like it's being narrated by more than one person. I think he delivered that series so perfectly, and I could listen to them over and over again. And of course, they could afford the best for that series because the series made so much money, so yeah, they're going to pick the very best they can find. And so Jim Dale has, for a long time, been the standard by which I hold the rest of the narrators too, and Stephen Pacey is up there as well. Planetside by Michael Mamet, narrated by R.C. Bray. Now, it's much easier for a narrator to be successful when you start out with such a strong text, but I feel like his particular delivery of Colonel Carl Butler was perfection. And every single Michael Mamet book I've read since then, I have physically read, and I missed the narrator. They are still awesome stories, but I think the narrator kind of like took it just a little bit further over the edge. He did such a good job with that series. The Black-Tongued Thief by Christopher Buehlman. This one made the list because the author himself narrated, and that almost never goes well. Authors may have pleasant speaking voices, but almost every time the quality of different character narration suffers, especially when it's women trying to do male voices. Like, I think it takes a professional, and so whenever it's like narrated by the author, I'm like, oh, great, yay. They do their best, but they are not professionals. And usually their voices are too forceful and they're trying to emphasize different things, whereas what we really need is someone who can emphasize the things but also be kind of a background to the story that we're hearing. Whenever an author narrates, I hear the author, and then the story is secondary, if that makes sense. But Christopher Buehlman did a perfect job narrating his book, Black-Tongued Thief. And it's actually probably a good thing that he narrated it, because there were so many very subtle, dry humor jokes put in there that the timing had to be perfect for the delivery to land. Yeah, he knew exactly where the jokes were and how they were supposed to be conveyed, and so yeah, it was perfect. And apparently he's really into like Renaissance fairs and time period, really gets into that like LARPing characterization, and it really lent itself well to the story. So yeah, massive kudos to him on that. Nick Podell's work on the Kingkiller Chronicles by Patrick Rothfuss. There was a point in time when this was my all-time favorite series, specifically for how well the narration was done in the audiobook. I hand-sold so many copies of this series. At Barnes & Noble, we had a competition on how many of a certain title you could hand-sell, and I didn't only hand-sell the first audiobook, I hand-sold the second one as well. And I am so sorry to everybody who I talked into buying the series because they've not been able to finish it since. Like, ultimate fail as a bookseller, but I really did love it that much. I thought it was so good. And this is a circumstance where the text and the writing and the skills of the narrator combine perfectly. Because I loved it so much, I tried to gather up as many Nick Podell narrated audiobooks as I could, and I recently read Sufficiently Advanced Magic by Andrew Rowe, and I did not care for Nick Podell's narration of that one, even though, like, it seems to be the exact same. Like, what's the difference? So, I think the Kingkiller Chronicles, the very specific type of narration in there was his home, and it was awesome. I still have a few more to try, and I don't dislike him, but I didn't love him as much as I thought I would. So if you're considering picking up the Kingkillers now, because Rothfuss finally made an appearance and read the prologue for the third book online, then yeah, now's your chance. The audiobook is awesome. And last but not least, the narration genius that is Simon Vance. I think he adds an element of quality and richness to everything that he is involved with. One of my favorites was how he did the Temeraire series by Naomi Novik. His voice has some quality about it that really lends itself to, like, rich histories. It makes you feel like it's such a robust tale, and I love the nuances between characters that he does. He's so good at being in the background that I sometimes forget he's there, and that's a mark of a truly good narrator in some regards, where you can just focus completely on the story. I also love his work on the Unhewn Throne series, and if I'm not mistaken, he also did the Raven Shadow series by Anthony Ryan. Nope, that was Stephen Brand. I like him too, but he's a little more dry than Simon Vance. Very similar, but they're different. And actually, Stephen Brand would be an honorable mention. I feel like sometimes he's a little bit too relaxed in his delivery, but the stories he usually gets a hold of are really rich, so it kind of makes up for it. But yeah, I really like him as well. Another awesome one that I'm listening to right now is the Sookie Stackhouse series by Charlene Harris, narrated by Joanna Parker. She gives this character so much authenticity and vibrancy. I can completely see how this got turned into a television series. Sookie is such an unconventional heroine, and I feel like the narrator really draws out the best qualities of her. And that bon tonk, backwoods, New Orleans accent just adds so much richness to the story. And then how she does the vampires in that as well is just so charming. I love it. So she is also on the list for that. And that's my lineup. It's such a subjective evaluation, but I tell you what, if you hate the narrator, it can really wreck a story. I don't feel quite mean enough to do a video on all the audiobooks that I hated, but oh my gosh, they really can make or break your story. And for the ones that I've chosen here, I feel like they not only suited the story well, but they enhanced it, making it a better format to experience it on. I want to know, what are some of your favorite audiobook series? Thanks so much for joining me for this video, and I hope to catch you next time. Bye.